Well, I'm Albert Lim, and since English is my third language, I have written down something to say so that I would not get over time. But I'm just so thankful to the Lord that I get to meet Benson for a long time. And we have wonderful fellowship. And just like all the saints were sharing, Benson's truly was a pattern that we can follow. When I visited Brother Lee one remarkable or memorable afternoon in June of 1997, that's a few days before Brother Lee went to be with the Lord, during that final phase of Brother Lee's illness, Brother Lee asked me to go ask Benson if Benson would come to Anaheim to help with the church in Anaheim. I went out of the room to look for a brother who could bear the witness to this crucial fellowship. And I found Brother Ed Marks. Brother Lee repeated his request to both Ed and me. Then Ed and I informed Benson of this request, and there was no question asked. Benson moved to Anaheim. Surely, in keeping with his absolute faithfulness to Brother Lee, throughout his years in the Lord's recovery, Benson obeyed Brother Lee's fellowship. This started the 25 years of Brother Benson's serving with us in the eldership in the church in Anaheim. This was a great mercy of the Lord. Much help was rendered to the brothers and sisters in the church in the matter of coordinations. Oh, that is a big thing. Of service, of the God-ordained way, of pursuing of the ministry, and the handling of different languages groups. You know, we have 4 or 5 languages in Anaheim. And the expansion of the districts from 1 district to 5 districts. And with the purchase of 3 meeting halls. Above all, we were fully encouraged to absolutely, and this is the underlying word, to absolutely follow the ministry of the age in the caring of all matters regarding the church and the family life. The first time I met Brother Benson was in 1968. You know, I met Benson among 140 saints that were sent from America to the Far East. Benson was one of the most outstanding brothers among them. I would never forget that visit for eternity. From their visit, I could see brotherly ministry at work. The saints in the forest were so touched by the exercise of their spirits. I saw the expressions of the triune God in humanity among those precious saints. I followed them, and I'm so glad I did. I followed them in calling on the name of the Lord. And this actually turned me right side up. You know, I was born in the recovery, but I never called the name of the Lord until that time. And that was quite something, you know. It was during that time that God became real to me. The God and Father of my parents became my God and Father. After my memorable encounter with the saints from America, I was so joyful that I walked around the whole university like a zombie, you know, not knowing where I was. Everything became worthless. Only the Lord's recovery becomes something. I met Benson and Ray. Again, here we have Benson and Ray. In 1975, you know, when the brothers was building the meeting hall in Ball Road, Although these brothers were not from California, they're very far away from California, but they gave themselves wholeheartedly to the project. I was very, very impressed by their diligence and faithfulness toward the completion of the building, which has become exceedingly useful to the Lord's recovery even up to today. In 1983, when my family decided to move back from Taipei to the United States, in fellowshipping with Brother Lee, it was decided that I would move to Irving, Texas. Irving, Texas. I believe that the main reason for that decision was that Benson was serving in Irving. I stayed in Irving for 6 years. Those are the best years of my life. My wife, Susanna, my sons, Enoch, David, and Andrew, they all have such a memorable time here in Irving, Texas. Being in the same locality with Benson afforded me an opportunity to learn from him closely. When my father came to visit Irving for the first time, he was so deeply impressed by Benson, and so he advised me to live close to him, close to Benson. We became next door neighbor for all the years that I lived in Texas. It was the best arrangement. We were so shepherded by the Phillips. Yes, they make a lot of mischief, but they really enjoy that very much. Is that right, Susanna? Are you one of the mischievous ones? In that same year, Burley came to Irving and started the Chinese-speaking work in the Dallas Metroplex. I was asked to help in the coordination of that work. Burley also arranged that I would coordinate with Benson in this work, even though Benson doesn't speak a word of Chinese. That arrangement kept me in very close contact with Benson. Our coordination was so sweet. I was thankful to the Lord to give me such an opportunity. The Lord, through that coordination, blessed the Chinese-speaking work in Dallas Metroplex. The number of saints I remember in 1963 is around 20-some, not much. Okay, but it grew to more than 1,000, I believe, today. And many of them have moved to other cities. The church in Richardson, the church in Plano, was also established in that time. And both of these churches has big meeting halls. The coordination between the Chinese-speaking saints and the English-speaking saints was always very, very sweet. The Chinese-speaking conference that has gone on for the last 40 years, since 1983, twice a year, we would have a Chinese-speaking conference. And it was very well attended by saints of all languages, especially in the Lord's Day morning. Benson truly cared for the Chinese-speaking saints. In those years, he also cared very much for the Spanish-speaking saints. He was a great help, to the saints from Puerto Rico, and some of them are here from Puerto Rico. Like Joaquin, your brothers are here. At that time in 1983, they just first saw the recovery. But where did they actually saw the recovery? If my understanding is correct, it is here in Irving, Texas. Benson even went to school to learn Spanish. Do you know that? So because he thinks that he's going to move to the Latin American countries. But something happened. A word of fellowship came from Brother Lee. He left all and went north. Instead of south, he went north to Russia. I think he also went to those schools to learn Spanish.
Yes.
I visited Moscow, where Benson served there. The tiny room, compared to Texas, those are tiny, tiny rooms. The tiny room where he stayed was just big enough for one full-size bed. There is no room for a closet. All the clothes were stored under the bed. So if they want to get to their clothes, they have to move the bed and go under the bed to get their clothes. Is that right? And the restroom has only one bathtub. And that bathtub is serving both as a kitchen, as a laundry place, and I think you also shower there, I suppose. You never shower there? So how do you clean yourself? Oh, bathtub. Oh, Benson really, really paid a price to serve in Moscow. If you know his house here, where you can have a meeting in the living room of 50 plus people, for such a person who wants to go to a one-bedroom apartment, no, not an apartment, it's just one bedroom, it is really something, Benson really paid the price. When I moved to Texas, I really saw something. Personally, Benson took me under his wing. He invited me to join the brothers' meeting and travel with him to different areas in Texas and the United States, and also to so many countries outside of the United States. I still can remember one time, we were supposed to go to Malaysia. Malaysia, if you don't know, is in the Far East. Okay. Then one morning he called me. He said, Albert, can we pass by Israel on our way to Malaysia? I said, pass by? I really don't know how to pass by Israel. So we actually have to buy a round trip from Anaheim to Israel, back to Anaheim, or back to LAX, and fly to Malaysia. Both of this trip is about, 16 hours long. But he is so determined. And I told Benson, there is a war going on in Israel. There was a war at that time. He said, we need to go because they want to have the first Lord's Day table near Jerusalem in a tiny city called Bethlehem. And so we did. In that plane, there is only Orthodox Jews. Nobody else wants to go to Israel. And they were all praying in Edis. So I said, something is wrong here. But that was one of the most memorable times we had in Israel, to be able to participate in that first Lord's table in the land of Emmanuel. Okay, this was something. Okay. Praise the Lord for what he did. Because, from this, I know what is important to Brother Benson. To him, the Lord's recovery is more important than anything else. And then, let me also share this. Brother Benson's personal care for the saint was exemplary. Benson, just like what Ray shared, would be the first to visit a sick brother at the hospital. And this actually happened to my family. My son David, who wants to come here, because something went on. When he was young, one time, he was seriously sick. He was diagnosed with temporary suppression of the factor VIII in our blood, And because of that, he was not able to stop bleeding just by one tooth extraction. So when we were in the hospital, it was a really, really serious situation. Even those physicians think that unless God intervene, David is not going to live. And that is what they told us. But what I was so touched with, Benson was there in the hospital. Benson cared for us. Benson think that this is like his son. He would just care for him as his very own. This is how he shepherded the saints. His support at the hospital was a great comfort and help for us in our care for our boy. The spiritual support through the prayer of the church and Benson's personal visit to the hospital brought us through the most difficult encounter. Such care and support will never be forgotten. Benson's proper humanity demonstrating his care for younger one is truly unforgettable. And not just to your children and young children, even to our family who just happened to live next door. One snowy day, I don't know if you remember Ben. Benson played on the street with our boys. My boys had so much fun playing in the snow. They still talk about it from time to time. So to my sons, Benson is not just a leading brother in the church. He is certainly Uncle Benson. This is still the preferred name they call Benson. They never call him Benson. They never call him Brother Benson. They call him Uncle Benson. This was remarkable. Now, Benson was a real example of how one needs to follow the ministry of the age. He was, like Ben shared. So maybe I'll just skip this. Okay, how he really followed the Lord, even at the great disappointment of his father. Okay, all right, let me share with you another thing. So the way Benson followed Brother Lee was a marvelous pattern to me. He received the speaking of Brother Lee as the Lord's leading. He tried to understand accurately and completely the ministry leading and to work it out absolutely. And after one conference we had in Anaheim, we came back here and Benson brought 20-some books of Brother Lee. And we fellowship about that conference over and over again so that we actually understand what Brother Lee is talking about. Sometimes you heard a conference, you may not really know what Brother Lee is talking about. We need to study, we need to dive into it. And this is how Brother Benson led us to study the ministry. When he was asked to go to Taiwan in the 1980s, he went there without any question. When asked to go to Russia, he went there. He was determined to follow the leading of the Lord through the speaking of Brother Lee, wherever the Lord may lead him. In so doing, he did encounter some difficulties, but his trust in the Lord never wavered. Brother Lee once said, "May the Lord cover me with his blood. The Lord could be my witness. When I was in mainland China," and this is Brother Lee speaking for himself, "I never tried to start any work anywhere. To me, everywhere was the same. I only received orders. Wherever there was the need, I was there. Moreover, wherever there was a place that was hard to work on, I was surely charged to go. I had no preference." When I read this, I said, this is Benson. This, I believe, is the very way that Benson functioned. He never considered the Russian work his own work. Details of the work were faxed to Brother Lee, followed by a phone call. This went on continuously. He tried to follow Brother Lee in letter and in spirit. I witnessed this personally. Such a manner of coordination during those years was glorious. In the book called The Glorious Vision and the Way of the Cross, Brother Lee said something like this: the secret of coordination is to stay on the cross and to be without opinion. He also said that the secret of coordination must be a matter of no more I. To Brother Lee, opinion is just the desire to be somebody. In the first printing of the Life Study of Genesis, message 88 in 1987, Brother Lee spoke something like this. He spoke about the secret of being perfected to be a pillar. The secret of being perfected to be a pillar. And this I quote. Brother Lee said, "Let me now tell you the secret of being solidly perfected to be a strong pillar for the Lord's move. Brother Benson Phillip has been perfected because he has no concept of his own. Recently, Brother Benson declared strongly that he only knows to follow the ministry of Brother Lee. Even when he saw certain mistakes, he forgot about them, having no time to waste discussing them. He only desired to soak in all the positive things." Benson was one of the kind in his absoluteness, in his following the Lord and the ministry. Aside from Abraham Chang, I have not found among Brother Lee's co-workers such a faithful pattern as Brother Benson. To him, the Lord's recovery was everything. Nothing else mattered more. I'm so thankful to the Lord that he gave me such a pattern to follow. I really miss our dear brother.